Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope lunch was nice. Let me explain a little bit about why Scytl believes that electronic today is very efficient, very secure, and also transparent and very user-friendly at the same time. Before I do that, I will first tell you a little bit about Scytl itself, and afterwards I will go into why electronic voting is the next natural step into the evolution of electro-monetization and electoral processes. If afterwards there's still time left, we can go through a few success cases, which I would hope. Okay, so Scytl, who are we? We are a worldwide leader in internet voting in the public sector market. Scytl dedicates itself to the development of highly secure solutions for electro-monetization and electronic voting in particular. Scytl has an academic background. Basically, we were born in a university in 1994 as a research group. We developed the first two PhD theses in this area, and in 2001 the company itself was born. So, counting all those years of research, we basically come with over 70 years of research developing cryptographic protocols and doing research on usability, user-friendliness, etc., etc. This academic spirit still remains in our company. We have many researchers and scientists that we work with. Some of them are hired into Scytl itself, and with others we have collaboration agreements. Some of the solutions that were discussed earlier today, I think we contributed to those, and many of our features are actually protected by patents and copyrights. In addition to that, we are often seen in international organizations, in governments and other areas where we advise them, and we participate in many breakthrough projects around the world. So, Scytl has offices, one in the US, one in Canada. Our headquarters are in Barcelona. We have an office in Kiev, another one in Greece. We have an office in New Delhi, and we have a small sales office in Singapore currently. And this is basically where Scytl currently works. As you can see, we have a lot of activity in the public sector in the US. We do some things in Canada recently as well, South America, quite a few projects in Europe, some things in Africa, we're expanding there as well, India, and Asia Pacific, Australia included. So our portfolio basically consists of several different components, all related to electro-monetization, electronic voting, which is the main reason why all of you are here today, including internet voting, which can be through voting kiosks or telephone voting, IVR systems, and we have many different solutions for that. We have solutions for parliament, parliament session, voting in parliaments itself. That's not something that is subject for the conference today. We do a lot in areas of democracy, citizens consultations mainly, and we have full election management systems, such as voter registration, election configuration, we manage voter lists, we do resource consolidation, election night reporting, so we do the full process basically. In addition to that, due to our skills, knowledge and background, we do often we provide consulting services regarding electro-modernization and democracy in general. This slide basically mentions three main areas of an election: pre-election phase, election phase, and post-election phase. And as we just mentioned, we do basically solutions and projects in all these areas. We have solutions for the pre-election and configuration, managing electoral roll, managing registration of candidates, printing of the ballots, configuration of an election, etc., etc. On election day itself, we have solutions to manage the process in the polling stations. Election day management, basically either based on the list or on poll books. For voting, we have poll site e-voting, internet voting, phone voting, not listed here, but we also have solutions for paper-based voting, postal voting. And then post-election, we have solutions for tallying, counting, consolidation, and election night reporting, as I mentioned previously. Certifications and audits. I think this was one of the points that was mentioned a few times before today. It's very important for transparency reasons that any electoral modernization solution, including electronic voting solutions, are successfully audited and or certified and or tested. And we have undergone quite a few certifications till date. And there's a number, for example, in Norway, which is upcoming. This is an important aspect of electronic voting. Now let's get to the contents. Basically, the messages that you will see today are the same or similar to the messages that you have heard this morning. Why electronic voting? As you know, that conventional voting basically it presents a number of limitations and also a number of problems. There can be disputes over ballots because the ballots may not be filled in correctly. People with disabilities, they may have difficulties to exercise their right to cast a secret ballot. Mobility problems, people travel more and more, so why should people be required to go to specific polling stations and cast their vote while they can, in theory, do it over the internet? Postal ballots, many people living abroad currently are required to either go back to their country to vote or to cast their votes using a postal ballot. Often these postal ballots arrive in big sacks after the day of the election, as many people know, so that's a problem. And in addition, there's some complex logistics to resolve. So with electronic voting and internet voting in particular, you resolve all this, and basically this is the next natural step in the evolution of electoral processes. So electronic voting itself is growing. We as a vendor, we can see that more and more countries are going towards electronic voting, are going towards internet voting, and the reason for that, basically, and I've heard it quite a few times today, there are significant advantages. First of all, convenience. Voters do not have to go to their polling place if you would use internet voting or telephone voting. And instead, they can vote convenient from home or from any location where they may be on election day. Flexibility. There's probably some people with election experience here. So imagine a small error on a ballot 2 days before the election and having to reprint all the ballots. With electronic voting, in theory, it's possible to make fast last-minute changes to electronic ballots. Transparency. The complete process of electronic voting can be very transparent. We've seen experiences from Norway. There's also other experiences in the world. Source code can be published, and voters can actually verify that their vote was counted as cast with technologies that are today available. In addition, with technologies like universal or verifiable mixing, auditors can completely follow the process, the elections itself, to make sure that the elections were trustworthy, were fair, and there was no fraud at all. And this without requiring the auditors to get to information that would lead to a secrecy of breach of secrecy of the votes. Speed and accuracy. At the end of the election, getting the results is much faster with electronic votes than with traditional methods, where you would have to actually contract a large team of people that count all the paper ballots during an election. Accessibility. People with disabilities have the right to vote, so they should be included. And cost is also often one of the important drivers behind electronic voting. And finally, which was also, I think, mentioned earlier today, prevention of voting errors. If you have a user interface that guides you through the voting process, when you make a mistake, the system can warn you that you're about to cast an invalid vote, and that's an advantage over a paper-based ballot. So, I think this was mentioned also earlier. Electronic voting can be done from controlled environment and uncontrolled environments. In controlled environments, you would typically see PCs or voting kiosks. This morning I heard a small comment from someone who said, but we have to buy specific machines and then store them during elections, and during 4 years they would not be reused. Well, in theory, that's not really necessary, because you can actually reuse existing PCs, or buy PCs for an election and afterwards reuse them in schools and libraries, and after 4 years buy new equipment. In controlled environments, in addition to PCs, mobile phones and tablets, you can also manage the election itself on election day with poll books, which is not mentioned here. But this basically allows you to authenticate the voters in case you would not have electronic voting ID or electronic voting cards ready. So you can authenticate the voters by means of their passport or any usual means that are in place currently. From uncontrolled environments, you typically vote either over the phone or using the internet. Efficiency. I'm more or less running out of time, so I'll try to go fast. Cost effectiveness, I think we've discussed this earlier. Economies of scale, once you introduce electronic voting or specifically internet voting, you can be extremely more cost effective than with traditional elections. Speed, counting process, when you have electronic ballots, ballots can be counted much faster than in paper-based elections. And emphasizement, there's many voters who live overseas, there's many voters that are remotely located, so this is a perfect opportunity to ensure that everyone can exercise their right to vote. Then security, we had a session this morning about many important drivers behind security. Scytl fully agrees with that this is one of the most important areas in electronic voting. End-to-end security. We've seen the session this morning, but it's very important to ensure that there are tamper-proof security measures in place to ensure that people both from the inside as well from the outside cannot tamper with the election and ensure that the elections are completely integral. Auditability, it must be possible that elections are audited during the election itself, but also before and after the election. And finally, privacy. Voter privacy is paramount, and votes must be encrypted to ensure that only an electoral board can decrypt them after the election. And also, it's very important to break any correlation between voters and votes. No one may ever find out what a specific voter voted for. User-friendliness, very important. There's many elderly people using the system as well, as we've seen. So systems should be capable to guide the voters through the voting process without any previous training. Many people may not have technical backgrounds or may not be used to computers, so this is very important. Accessibility is also one of the important drivers. We mentioned this before. Voters with disabilities should be able to vote without assistance while fully guaranteeing their privacy. And finally, flexibility. Our solutions are it's possible to adapt our solutions to any ballot format, including multiple multiple languages, like for example Slovak, Czech, Croatian, Bosnian, or whatever language you basically would need. Some success cases, very high level. Australia. In Australia we did 2 projects for the Victoria Electoral Commission, one in 2006 and one in 2010. And these projects were mainly based for voters with handicaps and illiterate voters during the state level elections. United Arab Emirates, this is a project that just finished, was quite successful. In a complete country they rolled out a solution, and basically they set up very large polling centers throughout the country, and people were able to vote from controlled environments from these polling places. Norway, I think we've heard that this morning, so it was a very interesting project as well, and hopefully this will continue. India, we did a project in the state of Gujarat, and basically this project will continue for the next 5 years. There's between 30 to 40% illiteracy rate among the voters, so again this shows how the importantness of ensuring that the system is very user-friendly. And about 50 million voters will participate in this exercise. In West Virginia, we provided a solution for West Virginian voters who lived overseas. This is often one of the areas where projects start and where you start introducing electronic voting. Comelec in the Philippines, same thing. We did a small project for the Filipino citizens who were living abroad in 2007, also for the expatriates. In the United States, in the state of Florida, it was one of the first, if not the first, project who actually allowed military overseas to participate with the election in 2008 and afterwards in 2010. United Kingdom, there were many pilots, I think the last one was in 2007. We run 2 pilots together with partners for the municipalities in Rushmore and South Bucks, included both IVR and electronic voting. France, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we're doing a large amount of projects in France currently for French non-resident citizens who are living outside the country. And we are going to do additional projects to the more than 1 million staff employed by both ministries to vote for their union representatives. So I think I have 20 minutes now. I can go into detailed success cases, or I can leave it for questions.
Hello, my name is Petr Novotný. I would like to know about the projects for voters living abroad. What is the technical solution for authentication of these voters? How do you approach them, and what kind of system you are using?
Well, this depends very much what is in place currently in these countries. That can range from voter cards that are being sent to these voters through electronic sign-up solutions, for example, as the ones that are used in the United States currently for the MOVE Act, to citizen cards or electronic IDs. So multiple solutions are possible, and each one has its drawbacks and its benefits. Ideally, for authentication of the voters, you would use electronic IDs.
My question is, one can see that you have a lot of experience from different countries on different level of election systems. If we start with something like that in Slovakia, on which level would you propose to start with pilot projects, and how to roll out the whole e-voting system?
What I would suggest first is to look at the legal reform, because what I learned this morning is that there may still be some questions whether or not this is possible. If legal reform will be in place, or if you would otherwise have permission to do pilots, there's different areas where you can look into. For example, voters living overseas. You can start pilots doing pilots for voters who have problems with mobilities. For example, voters with disabilities, etc.
Hello, my name is Michal Broska. I would like to ask you, you mentioned telephone voting. Could you describe it for us, and is there a reference? Thank you.
Yes, for example, one reference in Australia, another reference we have in the UK. Telephone voting, basically there's different solutions. You have solutions from sending SMS, which is a solution which I would personally not recommend because it's not really user-friendly. Other kind of solutions basically allow voters to navigate through the phone by pressing the different buttons that you have on your phone. So basically using IVR systems. Press option 1 for this candidate, option 2, and then press star to vote, for example. And in addition to that, you have solutions, for example, based on mobile phones. The mobile phones nowadays, they can run graphical user interfaces. Many people have iPhones or HTCs, etc. And you can develop voting applications for that, and we have references for those as well, yes.